latest, the count of the total number of positive cases of COVID-19 in India has risen to 4,789. In the last 24 hours, there have been 508 new cases and 13 more deaths. So now we, of course, track the numbers daily on how COVID-19 is increasing, expanding, and where we actually stand. But today I want to talk about a couple of matters with a very interesting speaker that I'm sure will add value to you. I'm joined by Shamika Ravi of Brookings. She was, of course, also member of the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council formally, and tracks these numbers on a daily basis with interesting deductions about them. So, Shamika Ravi, great to have you on the show. Thank you for speaking with us again. Let me just get straight off the bat and get your point of view on the numbers, because you've been maintaining these daily charts. And what do you really take away from the way we are growing? What stage are we in this pandemic?
Well, Tamanna, we are at a growth phase. It is very clear if you look at the number. We are nowhere close to where the EPI models were predicting, let's say a month and a half back, but that is not unique to India at all. In fact, the EPI models gave us extremely disturbing numbers, and they gave disturbing numbers for most countries. Now, the issue is these are not, no country is like a sitting duck, right? It's a dynamic situation when you see the probability of such massive numbers of infection. Then policies are brought about, social policies are brought about, and it was the same in India. In fact, I think on a hindsight, we were quite proactive with the airlifting, the initial isolation, the camps. But of course, right now we are at a growth phase. Earlier, we were doubling every 3 days, if you look at the numbers before March 23rd. After that, things actually looked quite good for a week because with the initial isolation and the contact tracing, I think people were, sort of contained in terms of infected people were separated. We had some stray episodes of people jumping quarantine and all, but by and large, things were looking fine. But as we discovered then from a couple of super spreaders across, the country, then it became very evident that this is going to spread further. And you see that in the numbers as well. From the 29th of March, you do see that we started to double every 5 days, every 3 days, every 4 days then. And we are seeing now that we are at a phase when we are doubling anywhere between 4.5 days. So we are in a growth phase. It is a very dynamic situation. We are yet to see the impact of a lockdown, what we have been expecting. It should take another day or two. The incubation period is usually 2 weeks. So it's a wait and watch situation. The government has also now declared that we are in a limited community spread phase. And because of that, I think you can see that the number of tests have also been ramped up significantly over the last week or so. So I think we are just going to see a further increase in the numbers as we begin to test far more aggressively than we have been doing in the past. But right now, all fingers crossed, really.
Couple of points. Yeah, no, all fingers crossed. Absolutely. Just a couple of points that I wanted to run by you. You mentioned that the true impact of the lockdown may be known in the next couple of days, but now you've been tracking these numbers closely. Would it be safe to say that we could have been in a far worse situation if a strict lockdown had not been imposed when it was?
Oh, 100%. If you look at the initial increase, then Tamanna, right now, the numbers, at least what we do this daily analysis early in the morning. And as of today, our number said as of last night, midnight, we had around 4,778 as per the data that we have been following. So over 14,000 number right now. So no, these policies are having a real impact. It's very important for the general citizens, all of us to realize that these are all for the greater good.
Yeah. Yeah, they've not come without its repercussions though, and I'll come to that in just a bit. I just wanted to stress and get your view on the point of testing. Now, we've been pretty conservative in expanding the testing guidelines. Simply put, in deciding who gets tested and who doesn't. We've started loosening that up a little now, but do you think it's time to ramp up testing much, much higher at this point?
I do think so. I have been sort of advocating this for the last few weeks. Ever since we began to find out these super spreaders, these quarantine sort of skippers, we knew that there is the contagion, while extremely well contained in the beginning, because of a lot of the proactive measures, has also now reached a stage where we can't just be chasing the fire, which means when we identify super spreaders or a hotspot, then we go with most of our kits and we begin to do contact tracing of people whom they have come in touch with. We have to actively also, Tamanna, bear in mind that for a large country, 1.38 billion, people locked up is also a very large economic cost, a burden. And for a low middle income country like ours, the opportunity cost of this lockdown is extremely significant. And I think from a point of view of lifting the lockdown, it is very important we take informed decision about it. So if you look at the data currently, about 60 districts account for close
Yeah,
to
I just want to,
eight.
I want to come to, I want to come to lifting of the lockdown in just a second, Shamika. If you'll just give me just a second. I just want to get a clear idea from you on what your stance is on testing. Do you think we're testing too less? Do we need to test more, or is it fine?
There's nothing called too much testing. And the reason I'm saying lifting of the lockdown is we have to aggressively go out and also test in districts where we have not yet discovered infection, right? Because unless you do random sampling, unless we go out and aggressively and more proactively just ramp up testing, how are we to know? It is very difficult to say with certainty that these 200 districts are untouched, right? The infection has not reached there without the testing. So right now what we're doing is we are chasing the fire. What I'm saying is you really need to go out there and proactively contain it in places where it hasn't reached, and the only way to do that is to really test. So we need to test more.
Okay. No, no, absolutely. That was clear. The reason I wanted to come to you separately with the lockdown question is because today we are hearing from various sources, nothing official yet, that many states are considering extending the lockdown. In a state like Maharashtra, where I'm sitting and speaking to you right now, or in Mumbai, that seems a real possibility because it's been declared a hotspot. But it comes with a cost. And a cost which may be difficult to contain and manage if this lockdown is extended. Do you think there is a very tough choice up ahead? I see huge damage if, in several industries and businesses stay shut even longer.
Yeah. No, absolutely, Tamanna. The costs are very real. And one thing we need to keep reiterating, it's not just livelihood, right? We want to prevent COVID deaths, but there is also something called all cause mortality. There are many other kinds of things. There are many other problems because of which people die. And just having everyone, this lockdown is having real costs on people's day-to-day lives beyond just the way we understand economy as a financial markets or just businesses. But first and foremost, you need to contain the contagion, and Bombay is one of our biggest hotspots. So I completely understand that a city like Bombay needs to be, far more proactive and maintain the lockdown until we are sure that we can allow the businesses to go back to work. But remember, that's in these cities. There are also several other tier 2, tier 3 cities which we haven't heard anything from. So what I'm saying is now we need to lift it in places with certain degree of certainty, right? We need to know that it's not there, and then let people go back to work. And before they go, do certain amount of screening, do the kind of initial surveillance and sort of checks that we carried out with the passengers, etc.
Yeah, I want to come to the question of economic support. coming from governments, state and central, but largely central is what everyone is looking for towards businesses. We've clearly seen that the call and the request that don't cut pay or don't sack employees has not been followed in some sectors, and understandably aviation, tourism, etc. have taken massive hits. The smaller companies cannot bear that kind of loss. Do you think government needs to step in aggressively with the package, and have we left it till very late already? While we've been quick on the medical front, proactive on the medical front, we seem to be lagging on the idea of business support.
Well, I think we have not been lagging if you think of the initial announcement that happened, Tamanna. This is very natural that in the beginning you want to preserve life, not just from the health or the medical side of it, but also in terms of, if you look at the bottom 30%, then almost all the announcements that happened in the first economic package that the FM unrolled were all mostly, they were targeted to this segment of the market, which is most vulnerable, which is very much hand to mouth existence. So that was required. Now, there is currently so much activity happening in and around the government, the central government, to basically come up with this sort of strategy, a well-informed strategy where the kind of problems you are highlighting do get the requisite support. Now, my personal take on this is that given the nature of the health problem we are dealing with, we can continue to wait and watch, and it will still remain quite uncertain. That is the nature of this infection. Whether it's humidity, temperature, we are just, none of this is certain. I mean, we are working with the assumption that we are going to be faced with a worsening situation. And with that assumption, we need to now front load a lot of the economic support, right? That's one of the reasons why we have governments, why we pay taxes, and why that's one of the biggest coordination roles of government in any sort of liberal democracy. So I think government has to front load and anticipate these kind of big disruptions that we are hearing various industries. Now, it's not just the SMEs which are bleeding. They are clearly bleeding. Even the large firms, which we assume they have deep pockets, but they are also being squeezed from both sides. A lot of sectors which have high fixed costs, right? Aviation, you're thinking of retail, they're also highly leveraged. So these are, getting squeezed from both sides. And I think the economic sort of the package or stimulus, and these are all, wrong sounding terms if you consider that it's really just survival for most industries. I think the government has to proactively go out and say, whatever it takes, while health first, but livelihood is a very close second. We will do whatever it takes. We are tightening our belt. We are willing to put up 4 to 5% of GDP to support and stem this decline, which is definitely going to happen, which is already upon us.
Just last question, anything you have in mind, Shamika, in the broad contours of what needs to be part of this economic package? I mean, we've been talking about things like wage support, etc. What do you think needs to come in right now? Sector-specific kind of stuff or a broad-based relief?
There are many things, many recommendations which we are sifting through. And I'm sure there are many groups and many task force and everyone is sifting through. I strongly feel about two aspects. One is that it's time that India does a revival of the economy against, this backdrop of this huge health infrastructure crisis. We have acute shortages, and you've been hearing numbers about shortages of bed and doctors and nurses. Our health infrastructure is lagging in so many different ways. So I think it is time that we make our healthcare sector front and center for public investment-led future growth of this country. That is number one. And number two, I think broad-based policies are much better right now, simply because there is this infection, there is isolation, we are all sitting locked up in our houses. But more importantly, the more micromanagement we expect the government to do, the more targeting we expect the government to do, the less likely it is going to be, in terms of timely effectiveness. So I'm a big supporter for something that basically lifts the tide, something like, let's give tax holidays for the next 6 months, most taxes. And that will not only take care of the consumption and the demand side of the problem, but it will also give enterprises a relief that now they don't have to worry from at least this one part of aspect of their business, which is taxes. Now, of course, the employment side of it continuously is a big worry, and there are various different policies that are being fine-tuned. But know this, that there is a lot of deliberation happening right now, keeping life and livelihood at the center of the economic package.
Well, of course, we're waiting and watching that space on when that economic package does come through. Meanwhile, thank you so much, Shamika Ravi, for speaking to us. Shamika Ravi, they're tracking the numbers every day with great insights on what's happening.